Hi everyone, in this third video in the series, we are going to take the banner that we made in part 1, the buttons we made in part 2, and we're going to create a homepage in Canvas. So let's go ahead and make a course. I will say when you create your course, you do want to include the year because you can't reuse course names. So I'm not going to go into the details of setting up the course. That's beyond the scope of the video, but feel free to let me know if that's something that you would be interested in. So the default homepage is the module section, which is where you can build out your repository of course documents. That's not what we want. We want sort of a traditional homepage with links and things like that. So we're going to go to make a page, and we're just going to call it our homepage. Now we need to add in the things that we built in PowerPoint. So I'm going to start with the course banner and just upload that. Now you'll notice that this is really huge. That's not a big deal. You can easily go in and change the size of your image. And it might just be a matter of sort of playing with things a little bit to see what size you want them to be. You don't want it to be too huge because you do have sort of a compact space that you're working with, but don't feel like it needs to be teeny tiny. I have 3 buttons that I'm going to bring in that are related to the agenda, and I'm going to set those in sort of an inverted triangle figure. In order to get my 2 buttons spaced evenly, I'm going to use a table. I'm going to set the border width at 0 so that it essentially becomes invisible, but I didn't have to do anything in order to get that to happen. So I'm going to bring in each of my buttons, my this week's agenda and my last week's agenda, so that those are on top. You'll see again the image comes in very large, not a problem. It's easy to resize the dimensions of it and make it what I want it to be. And it's just a matter of centering them once they are in the table and importing the other. And when I import this other one, I'm going to use the same dimensions that I used for the first one, and I will use the same dimensions for the last one. Now the third one, that's sort of the peak of the inverted triangle, that doesn't need to be in any sort of table because it's on its own. I can just center it. Now it looks like I'm getting this all perfect on the first try. It's only because I practiced with this and figured out what it was that I wanted it to look like. So you can just use my dimensions as a starting point, and then if you want yours to be bigger or you want yours to be smaller, it's easy to do. So now I'm just going to center this one, and then I have my 3 agenda buttons together. And then the last thing that I want to add is that Meet the Teacher button. I'm going to put this down towards what is going to be the bottom of my page, just because it's not something that students are accessing all the time, and quite frankly, I don't really care if they read it or not, so it's just something that is there, but I don't want to call attention to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And then at this point, I'm going to go ahead and save, just so that I don't lose anything. But at this point, these buttons are just images. They aren't actually buttons yet, but you can see what they look like before we go back in and actually make them buttons. So each week when I make my agenda, that's a new page. And each week I will change the link to this week's agenda and last week's agenda. My old agendas are going to be part of a module, which I'll show you in a minute, and my Meet the Teacher is part of a page. So I'm going to go ahead and make my pages. I'm not going to fill out the pages right now. I'm just creating them so that they exist and I can link them on my homepage. Now, I have this week's agenda, or a week 1 agenda, but I'm not going to have anything in the first week that will be obviously for last week's agenda, since there is nothing. So that button won't be active the first week of school. Again, not filling any of this out. I'm just sort of creating the dummy pages that I can go back and do later. If you'd be interested in how I set up my weekly agendas, let me know. I'd be happy to share that with you. So now I'm going to create the links here. It's real easy to do. I just click on course links, and then I can go to the pages and I can add my pages as links. And once I'm in the editing and adding links, I don't have to exit and enter. I can do everything at one time, which is convenient. And again, last week's agenda doesn't have anything for the first week of school. The last thing I'll need to do is create that module that I told you about for old agendas. But the first thing I want to do is save. And then for modules, as I mentioned at the beginning, that's sort of like a repository of course documents, and it can be a repository of pages. So I'm just going to click Add Module, and I'm going to call it Old Agendas. And each week I will just drop my old agendas that are off of those 2 buttons into the modules, so that students can access something that is older than 2 weeks, right? So by the end of the semester, it'll have 16 or 17 old agenda pages in there. But that's nice if you ever have new students, or if you allow students to complete makeup work. It allows them to go back and see those documents really easily. So as I was talking there, hopefully you saw that I added the link to the module in the same way I added the link to the page. There are a few things I need to do in order to set this as my home page. I need to publish the page, and then on the 3 vertical buttons, I need to click Set as Front Page, and then you'll see that gray box comes up. Now I'm going to click on Home, and on the right-hand side, I'm going to click Choose Home Page, and then Pages Front Page. Now this will set it so that this is actually my home page, because just calling it home page doesn't do anything. So you can see this is what it will look like for me, and I can click on Student View, and this is what it will look like for students. It's easy, it's clear, there's not a lot of confusion about where to go. I'm sure there are other things you can add to your homepage that would be helpful, but for me, I want my students to know that the agendas are where it's at, and this conveys that to them and is really simple. Hope it helps.